Check this out. This is the new Sony 50-150 f2. It's a pretty crazy lens and something that we really haven't seen before, and it's a G Master. And so in this video, what I want to do is show you some of the performance of this lens, talk about this lens, what makes it special, and just show you how I've been using it to film some videos the last couple weeks. So if you're ready, let's get into it. So 50-150 f2 is kind of crazy if you think about it. It's almost like having a bunch of primes in one lens. And the primes that this would cover would be the 50mm, 85, and 135, 90, some other ones in there as well. But it's kind of similar to the 28-70 f2, which covers 28, 35, 50, and up to close to that 85. A 70 is not quite 85, but you do get that range with that 28-70. So this kind of takes that and goes longer with it. And Sony's pretty close to having a trinities of f2s, 28-70, 50-150. All they need is a wider version, which would probably be a pretty big lens, because this 50-150 isn't a small lens. You can see right here that I have the A9 III on the back of it. It's not huge, it's not unusable. It's kind of like a 70-200 f2.8, just thicker and bigger, like girthier. It's a pretty thick lens. But it's also fairly light for the size. I've had this with me for a bunch of different shoots, client jobs, and also just out doing some adventure filmmaking, and it's not crazy heavy. So this lens is 1,340 grams, which is close to 3 pounds. It's like 2.9. For its size and what you're getting out of this lens, I would say it's a great size. Now, the biggest reason that you'd want to get this lens is that f2. Having an f2 in a zoom lens just gives you more flexibility to get that super shallow depth of field and have it across multiple focal ranges. So it's not quite as shallow as an f1.4. However, you're giving up a little bit on that aperture to be able to have a bunch of lenses in one body. Now, I want to pause the video for 1 second and just mention Sony didn't pay me to make this video. They sent this lens out to me as a loaner to test for a couple weeks, and they didn't have any hand in this video. However, this channel is supported by those of you who purchase my LUTs and my courses over on the Creator Film School. I have a new course that's 30 days to become an adventure creator, how to make short form content or long form content here on YouTube, and I take you through every step of the process. All right, let's get back into more about this lens. Now, it's a Sony G Master, so everything that you come to expect from a Sony G Master is packed into this lens. So you have your focus, zoom, and aperture ring. You have 3 different custom buttons on the lens itself, so you can either click it or you could declick it, and it has a full-time DMF switch on the side. Now, this one also comes with a collar, so you can mount the lens directly to your tripod. And also this rotates easily to go from vertical to horizontal. And that's one way I've actually been using this lens over the last couple weeks. So taking this out with some of my client jobs, you can see here I had some fitness photography. And also I took it out to go exploring with my daughter. And I used this lens for the exact purpose that it was built for, creating YouTube shorts. Scattered across the desert are strange structures. Some shimmer, some whisper, and some disappear in the light. But they all have one thing in common. You won't find them here for very long. This is Desert X, a living gallery of massive outdoor art pieces placed directly into the Coachella Valley. Each is temporary, vanishing back into the landscape after the show ends. Some bend sunlight, some are built from ancient mud, others, they feel like relics from the future. We explored them all, including one that reveals a message when the sun hits it just right. It's art you don't look at, it's art you step inside. And for a moment, the desert becomes a canvas for something that you can never experience again. It gave me a chance to really play with this lens in a variety of situations where I was going from horizontal to vertical and kind of run and gun shooting with it in a video setting, because this lens is built for video shooters. It's obviously a good photo lens, but it's also built with all the video capabilities. So it's going to have real-time autofocus tracking up to 120 frames per second. So when you're shooting with the A9 III, shooting slow motion, or you're shooting at the high burst rate for photos, you're going to have autofocus tracking the entire time. It's got minimal focus breathing, like you could barely see it when you're actually using it. It's quiet and it's dust and moisture resistant. So when you're out filming with it in the elements, you're not going to have issues with this lens. And I really wanted to put this to the test to see if it would be something that's functional for video shooters. So I went out to Desert X, which is a bunch of art installations all through the Coachella Valley area. So down in Palm Springs, up in Desert Hot Springs, out in just the middle of the desert. And me and my daughter went and explored, and I shot a bunch of stuff with her going to these different places. And I've made a bunch of shorts out of this content, which is all going to go on my second channel, which if you haven't seen my second channel, it's called Explore with Jeven Dovey, and it's nothing camera related. It's all just adventure stuff. And so playing with this lens in that setting really gave me a sense of working with this lens and really kind of testing it out. And the couple things really stood out to me. The size is fairly big. Like, it is a large lens when you're actually working in a run and gun setting. Now, I have the 28-70 f2, and I love that lens. And it's a little bit shorter than this, but it's also big like this lens as well. And that lens, the 28-70, is much smaller than Canon's version of that same lens. So Sony's definitely shrinking the technology into smaller lenses, but you're limited by physics. Like, to have a wide aperture on a zoom like this, you have to have a big lens. And so working with it in this setting, it is a little bit tougher to work with these big lenses in a run and gun style setting. And so it just takes a little bit more time to work with this lens, and it's bigger, so it takes more room in your bag and everything like that. However, having that 50-150 gives you quite an interesting range at an f2. I was actually able to do some wildlife filming with this lens because of its reach. And so I was camping one night, and there was a bunch of mice running around in the rocks, and they're in and out of the light. And using an f2, I could gather a ton of light. Like, it's great for a low light lens. And I was able to film these mice running around. And with the A9 III, I pair that with the 1.5 times crops, the APS-C mode, and I could really get in there with getting these mice in close up, and I get some great shots. And then the next morning, there were some bunnies running around, so I grabbed some shots of them, and I was able to do some wildlife filming with this lens because of that 150 reach. Now, would this be a wildlife lens? Maybe. I'm not a wildlife shooter, so if you are, you can let me know in the comments, but I feel like 150 is a good range. Like, you could get pretty far away, but it's also just a 150. You could get an f2.8 and have a 200mm and get even more range. And it was interesting to work with this in that run and gun setting, working with my daughter, kind of like shooting these different environments. And what I've found is that the f2 is great for anything portrait related. Like, this really shines when you're shooting portraits and you're really shooting people. When you start getting to more landscapes or objects or things in the environment, doesn't feel that different than if I was to shoot with an f2.8 on a 70-200. You get a little bit more shallow depth of field. You get a little more of that separation, but it's still not the separation that you get with like a 1.4, or if you have like a 50-1.2, you really get a ton of separation. And so because of that, I think this lens is for photographers and filmmakers who want, low light. Obviously, the f2 gives you a little bit more light, but also you're going to be working with people, and you're going to be working more in this portrait setting. So if you're someone who works with an 85 all the time and a 50, this lens is fantastic because it puts all those in one, and you have an awesome portrait lens. Now, when I was shooting videos, one of the things I kept finding myself is I was always on the 50. Like, I tried to use the longer range of this lens, but oftentimes I kept defaulting back to that 50 unless it was something specific, like focusing in on wildlife, like getting these mice or really small details. But otherwise, I kind of sat more on that 50-70 range. And so for me, as like a video shooter who would be using this for filmmaking, I think this lens has some interesting uses, but I would skew as a video shooter to go more 28-70 over this lens because I don't think I would use this that often. Now, it's definitely an awesome lens to have available to rent for those situations when I want a longer lens, but I still want that low light capability. And so the pricing right now, according to the sheet that was sent to me by Sony, it says US is going to be around $3,900. It's a lot of money for a lens. And so if you're someone who's buying expensive glass, you're buying 50s, 85s, 135s, and you just want all in one, it might make sense. If you're someone who's doing like weddings, this would be a fantastic lens for weddings, working with people at a distance, being able to change that range. I could see this lens being perfect for wedding filmmakers. Also, anyone who's shooting sports or athletes, because you have to have that little bit of distance, but you really want that separation with what's going on with the action and the lightning fast autofocus, like this would be perfect. So there's definitely some of you out there who this lens be an awesome tool. There's definitely moments where I feel like having this long lens could be really cool. So I'm glad this lens exists, and it's something that I definitely want to rent for future projects. And it's a great tool to have accessible if I do need a fast, long lens. And I think that's the best thing about gear. You have to buy everything. So if this lens serves a purpose for a shoot you're working on, you could easily rent it. But I think Sony did a fantastic job with this lens. It's compact for what it is. It's light, and it just takes beautiful photos and videos. So I'd love to know your thoughts down below in the description. And next, you should check out this video right here, which is all about that 28-70 f2. And that's a lens I actually went out and purchased after I made this video, because that lens is such a great tool for documentary style filmmaking. See you over there.